Welcome to Charts Today. My name's David Linton, and today's edition for Tuesday, the 16th of July, comes to you from London. And we start by looking at the dollar index, just still pretty flat. So, dollar weakness is still a theme on the short term. We've got downside targets, medium term bearish as well. The long term chart remains bullish. Remembering this is my weekly, my daily, and my 60-minute long term, medium term, and short term. Taking a look at the euro, we see that that's actually holding the strength on that dollar weakness at the moment. So, but just maybe running out of steam a little bit here. So, and the dollar yen is where we normally see the heads up for any change in the dollar, and that's not yet showing through. So, whilst we're below the cloud on the dollar yen, I'd say the dollar remains bearish on that short-term chart. Looking at sterling, we're back below 125 this morning, so that's taken us back into bearish territory for sterling. Bearish on all three time frames against the dollar, which is already weak, remember, versus the other currencies. So sterling is even weaker. Looking at sterling against the euro, we're sinking lower here as well. 110.90. We've got our next target below 110. And we talked about that last week, saying that 110 was now the level to watch. Long-term bearish, medium and short-term bearish as well. Not good for sterling as we start to look at the spectre of no-deal Brexit. Looking at sterling against the Swiss franc, we're sitting at 122.83. Sinking lower here as well, so looking fairly bearish there too on all three time frames. And against the Aussie dollar, it's also sinking. So we're seeing just across the board sterling weakening there. Bitcoin sitting at $10,500, still in the bearish trend there, just struggling to move to bullish and looking like a little bit of a breakdown from this top. So we might just see that Bitcoin is back in the cloud and just struggling to break out on that long-term chart. S&P 500 index holding the 3,000 point level, so that's still pretty good for the market. And the Nasdaq 100 also looking bullish, just a whisper away from the $8,000 level, 8,000 point level, and the Dow also just edging higher in that new all-time high territory, and the Russell 2000, the broader-based index, just showing that US equities across the board are not performing. We could do a market breadth analysis, but this is a quick, easy way of just saying that the smaller caps are not following just by looking at the Russell index. The futures this morning, the S&P future is flat. The Nasdaq E-mini is also flat. So it does look like the US market will open flat with no clear direction as yet. The future will give us a heads up as we get closer to the US opening, of course. The FTSE 100 index is consequently flat as well, waiting for direction from the US, and UK midcaps also fairly flat too. The DAX is up slightly, but still in bearish territory on the short-term chart. And the CAC 40 is actually still holding its own. It's the European market that still looks relatively strong. The Japanese market is down 0.5%, the stronger yen not helping there, and still looking a little bit worrying on these charts because we are in pretty well in bearish territory all three time frames. The Hang Seng is up slightly this morning. Of course, Hong Kong has seen quite a lot of turmoil lately politically, and consequently it just has really struggled. And the Shanghai Composite, after those GDP numbers that disappointed, is still just sitting in bearish territory. So we are just seeing a weakness there. The Indian market still looking pretty positive, although we are still short-term bearish, but the medium and long-term charts looking very good indeed, with lots of upside targets. The Aussie market just edging lower as well. So basically, most equity markets just waiting for direction as to whether the US can keep running higher now, having made new highs. Brent crude is sitting at 66.40, very flat at the moment. The last few days we've just been flat, holding on to the gains that we saw on the Iran crisis last week, but we are just looking like we might give that up. Remembering at this time of year the seasonality for crude oil is not great. And looking at WTI, we're also heading lower there, starting to turn bearish on the short-term chart as we head into the weaker second half of the year, the summer driving season over, or the run up to it at least. US nat gas is down below 240 again, so looking pretty flat there, still in the doldrums. Gold holding its breath at $1,414. Still looking pretty bullish on the short term. Medium and long term charts great with lots of upside targets. The downside targets all negated. Gold is looking like it will run higher. Silver, similarly, also in bullish territory, up quite significantly this morning. The long-term chart not yet as bullish as the gold chart, but starting to see signs that the precious metals generally are going to run. US 10-year yields sitting at 209, so they've fallen back below that 210 level, just holding the short-term bullish trend, but interest rates in the US fairly static at the moment. We're waiting for the next Fed move, which the market is expecting now to be down. And just taking a look at German bonds, of course, those lower yields are meaning that German bonds are holding on to those high prices. So this is the inverse of the yield, of course. We've got upside potential still for German bond prices. So still leading to negative yields in Germany. Taking a look at the stocks, if we take a look here, we see just this data coming from Yahoo Finance, so anyone can use this. And just looking at the stocks here, we see that the indices across the globe are pretty mixed, but the US market up last night. Taking a look at the Dow, we see here the Dow 30 best performer was Dow Inc. again yesterday. They're just starting to run a little bit, and that's looking quite interesting. Apple up 1%, so we are seeing quite a lot of Dow stocks improving. Banks struggled a bit yesterday, down about 1%. Looking at the Nasdaq, the best performer in the Nasdaq was AMD. They were looking strong at up 3.5%. And looking really set to break to new highs there. And Tesla, actually having had a terrible 2019, is actually on a recovery path at the moment. So looks like they might just break into bullish territory there. They've been oversold. AMD, just looking at their relative, they've outperformed the market by 55% this year, so quite significant. Taking a look, the Symantec were the worst performer. They were down 11%, disappointing the market there. So still not a great looking chart. In the Aussie market, we saw that 7 West Media were there up 4, just Channel 7, up 4.7%. Not enough to change the look at the chart there. Galaxy Resources, we quite often seen, is being in the leaders or the laggards, and again, still on a heavy downtrend, having underperformed the market by 50% this year. So that 4% rise yesterday is really not very meaningful. Perpetual Limited were down 5.8%. That's starting to make that chart look pretty bearish, breaking down on the medium term and staying bearish on the long term. And Domino's Pizza in Australia also just struggling on that trend there. Here we see live updates coming in from Yahoo. The Chinese market was pretty mixed. We saw here in the Shanghai index pretty evenly balanced. And then on the Indian market, we see Yes Bank again. They're quite often in the leaders and laggards board. Counter trend moves. The trend is still down, underperforming the market by more than 50% so far this year. And looking at Tata, we're also in bearish territory here, even though they were up 4%. Not many stocks were down. It was just that the leaders weren't enough to really take the market very positive in India. And here we see Tata Consultancy actually looking pretty good. We're seeing this trend where the worst performers are actually the best looking charts. We get the counter trend moves, so it's quite interesting. Looking into Europe this morning, we take a look at the UK market. Burberry up quite sharply this morning, up 5%. So the market happy there, making new 12-month highs. We've got ITV up 2.5%. They're still doing quite well. We're seeing quite a lot from airlines this morning. Ryanair shares are up, and we're also seeing EasyJet up in sympathy, up 2.7%. Not enough to take the chart bullish. They have underperformed. We're still seeing also miners. They were strong yesterday. Anglo American, Glencore looking good. IAG, British Airways, and Iberia International Airlines Group looking pretty good today, but they are still very much in bearish territory and having really underperformed the market by 40% this year. Seeing some interesting other ones here. It's, Sainsbury's, M&S. We are seeing a little bit on the retailer side. Rightmove down 1.7% this morning. Experian also down Charts, interestingly, again, the worst performers today are the best looking charts. Experian also looking good, Auto Trader also looking good. So we are seeing a little bit of recycling going on there in terms of performance. Looking at the FTSE 250, Rank Group's the best performer. They're up 2.7%. Not a great looking chart. Saga also up 2.7%. Not a good looking chart. Aston Martin really haven't performed very well since they went public, but we are just starting to see signs of an improvement, and we're seeing that in the relative as well. Taking a look at the downside, we've got AG Bar Group. They're down 30% this morning. That's really they've been hit really hard there, and Hastings Group down 6%. That chart not looking good. Taking a look at the European stocks, the top 50 European stocks, we've got BMW. They're the best performer this morning, up 1.3%. Not looking great on the chart still though. Adidas in Germany are a great looking chart, and they're up 0.8%, so we are seeing quite a strong performance there. 28% outperformance on the Dow Jones index this year, so looking pretty good there. And then looking at the downside, I've got Daimler Group. They're down. So we're seeing BMW are up, Daimler are down just under 1%. Enel in Italy we're seeing looking pretty strong. That's the Italian utility. And SAP Group, although they're down this morning, the chart's looking strong. So we are seeing this theme of the worst performers tend to be the best looking charts at the moment, and the ones that are performing strong, we're seeing counter trend moves. That's it for today. Until tomorrow, happy charting. See you then.